Ghana is facing the crisis, but this crisis is a very interesting crisis. It's not a crisis of shortage, it's a crisis of glut. And you see it here with rice, maize, and soya bean. Already, we've seen the farmers across the country announcing a boycott of this year's National Farmers' Day. It's never happened before, it's unprecedented. Because you're having unprecedented circumstances that play in the agri space. Tonight, my guests are going to be seated for us to look at the problem. If you haven't paid attention, just spend a few minutes with me. Let's go through this so you can understand the background to why this is such a crucial conversation to have. What do we know? What we know is that a few weeks back, there was a statement that was issued by the farmers alerting us to a problem. The problem was that rice, maize, soya, they produce it in significant quantities. There isn't the market for it, so we are wasting it away. And yet, while we do this, while our local farmers have spent their top dollar to import, to produce locally, we are importing huge quantities, mainly rice, into this country, when we should be relying on what we produce locally. That is a conundrum that needs to be fixed with policy. We've seen that the government is attempting to address this. There was a press conference last week by the Buffer Stock Company, by the way, which was set up with a mandate to deal with this, mop up excess in the system when the local farmers break their backs to farm and to produce. The Buffer Stock Company, they have assured that they have some 10 million CDs that is going to be made available to them to mop up this excess maize and rice in the system, and hopefully that solves the problem. My guests will join me because they themselves are farmers. They are directly affected by this. I wonder what they've seen or heard in the last few days that will address this fundamentally. And then you also look at the sheer number of products that we are bringing into this country at the time when, in the case of maize and soya, we are producing far more locally than the demand shows. And as for rice, we know the issue already. We have enough capacity locally to deal with this. If you look at 1.1 million metric tons is what in 2024 we produce when it comes to rice. The demand is 1.5 million metric tons, so there's a shortfall there of some 400,000 metric tons. Then a smart policy would say, let's import that 400,000 to show up, to make up for that balance. But we're not doing that. We're importing far more than what the local farmers have. My guests are going to be seated, so we'll look into this problem that has forced the farmers to announce that they are going to be boycotting the Farmers' Day celebrations. The first Friday of December is going to be unprecedented indeed. If that happens, the government is currently scrambling to try and deal with this and buy back that excess when farmers have indeed produced and led to a glut. That is going to lead to farmers losing funds. Some of them have gone to take loans to produce. It's going to push a lot of people into poverty. There's a big crisis now on this, and my guests weigh in after this. And thanks for joining us on PM Express. It's always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Academic Times and Pepsi Cavity Fighter. If you're looking for a tank to store water in that's durable, that will last, it is Syntex Tank. It is a tank that has a tortoise on it. That's how you find quality. Look out for the tortoise on the tank and simply get one, because you are guaranteed of long-lasting water storage that is durable. And also tonight, you have to look out for the Academic Times Journal when it is launched, because they're launching very soon. That's going to make sure that the research that is produced in academic institutions do not gather dust on the shelves. They will launch pretty soon, and when they do, make sure you grab a copy. And before you sleep tonight, you want to use Pepsi Cavity Fighter, because every time you eat food, the sugars are trapped between your teeth, leading to tooth decay and gum disease, in some cases foul breath also. And that is why tonight, before you sleep, get the Pepsi Cavity Fighter, because every smile matters. My guest tonight for this conversation, all important indeed, is Dr. Ama Eni Nopondia. He's the Vice Chair of the Competitive Africa Rice Platform. Anthony Morrison is with me in the studio. He's the CEO of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. Also joining me is Bismarck Owusu Norte. He's Executive Director of Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Joshua Tuatoba is the Interim Secretary of the Association of Rice Producers and Processors. Edo Kaiwe is a Director of Policy, Advocacy, Legal Entrepreneurship Support Hub, also the former head of the General Agricultural Workers Union. He himself is an old-time farmer himself, and he still is. I'm delighted that he joins me in the studio. He recently became a lawyer called to the bar, and so he's very interestingly has a very dual role and looking at the legal implications of farmers who have invested a lot of money into farming, and they now have a glut. How are they going to convince the banks to let them off the hook when their investment has gone down the drain? So that's Edward Kaiwe there with me in the studio. Let's start with the statement that got the ministry talking. Last week, Friday, the ministry held a news conference to try and address it because we heard the farmers on the back of a statement saying that they're going to be boycotting this year's National Farmers' Day on the first Friday of November. And I want to bring in Dr. Ama Inin Opondria. Doc, I'm grateful that you could join me here. You were one of those who signed that statement, were you not?
For the East Ghana Rice Campaign, yes.
Yes, good. Tell me the problem. Give me a sense of what the problem is.
So what happened? Let's go back like a year. What happened was farmers produced at a certain cost. At the time they were producing, the dollar was at a certain rate. So they bought fertilizer at a certain rate. They got input seed and all of those things at a certain rate. When they were done and they harvested, then the CD started appreciating. So when that happened, then it became cheaper for people to bring in rice, foreign rice. And so people brought in cheap foreign rice, but farmers had produced at a certain cost. And so the foreign rice became cheaper, and buffer stock was also in transition. So there was a change over in government, and they weren't buying as they were supposed to. So there was quite a little bit of a murky situation at the time. And so farmers got stuck with what they had, and nobody was buying. Then people, of course, were buying the cheaper imports that had come into town. Now farmers have planted again with the new directive from government. They also got seed, they got fertilizer, they planted again, and we are now in the harvesting season. And now there's the rice sitting from last year because we haven't been able to sell, and there's more rice coming in. And so that is where the tricky situation now is.
Now, Morrison, this is not only a problem with rice, from what I understand, correct?
Very good evening to your cherished viewers and to also all the agribusiness and farmers stakeholders out there. This started last year where we had a long, prolonged drought. And I think that to a large extent, a lot of things haven't been managed since last year.
So which other crops are we talking about?
So we're talking about maize, which of course we consume about 3.2 million metric tons. And is the most consumed grain in the country. We do rice of 1.8 million metric tons consumed, and which we produce about 900,000 to 1 million fluctuatively. And we also do, in the same respect for maize, we produce about 2.6 million metric tons, leaving a gap of 500,000 metric tons. And our actual production capacity projectively is for soya is 700,000 metric tons. But we do about 300,000 metric tons for soya. Now, our intake for soya in terms of demand from the factories, and you know for the factories, they benefit from two levels, the vegetable oil and also for soya cake or the soya meal, which goes to the livestock sector or the aquaculture sector for the feed meal. So these are the three areas we're talking about. And when the drought occurred, we actually implied the restrictive order. And my lawyer, I'm sure he will expand more on that. The LI, the legislative instrument that stipulated restrictions on the soya exports, which was approved by Parliament and Cabinet last year.
Because we didn't have enough to feed ourselves.
Yes.
So do not export what you're producing locally, so
Exactly.
we can take care of the local demand.
So
that's for soya.
That's for soya. But when the drought happened, it was implied across board because soya is a grain and rice is a grain and maize is a grain. So it was applied across board. Now, what happened was that there was an extension of the export ban across board on these three commodities. And now that has affected it. And let's put this...
How exactly? Explain.
Okay, so let's put this into context. During the drought, we got support from the World Bank, about $135 million. We also got some money voted by Parliament. I think you remember we were on this site.
Yeah.
We discussed the money that was voted to support farmers with regards to mitigation and social interventions. And all this, government imported then a lot of maize and rice to be distributed to farmers. And
to plant?
No, as a way of social protection interventions. They have lost their fields, so they needed to be supported with food.
Okay.
So we imported these grains. Now, fast forward, some livestock feed producers in the country also went to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and demanded that they should be given permits to import maize. Now, between last year and this year, we had imported close to 350,000 metric tons of maize. And we have also done about almost 1.2 million metric tons of rice. If you look at the data, the statistics of the imports that is coming in, we have also stated clearly that there are seemingly illegal importation on rice. And cumulatively, we're talking about over 400,000 metric tons. And so a country that produces roughly 900,000 to 1 million metric tons will certainly have deficits in terms of the glut we are seeing now. But what happened last year was that we were not able to mop up the remaining harvest of the drought. So there was a spillover. So these grains have stayed with the farmers. These grains have stayed with the rice processing
but
factories.
Explain something, I mean, for us mere mortals.
Okay.
If you had the drought,
yeah,
then you can't produce.
Okay, so the drought doesn't mean that you have lost everything. Mm-hmm. You can have flood.
But you won't produce as much as you would have.
Yes, of course. You can be served food in the restaurant, and the plate will fall, but you may be able to salvage some. That was what...
Yeah, I know, but if that's the case, whatever it is, the drought will limit your ability to produce a full capacity.
Yes, but...
So where is the glut coming from then?
Okay, so the glut is coming from the spillover of last year's harvest, which the market were not able to uptake. Now, at the point of harvesting this harvest season, and you know, the southern sector, including the BA enclave, you know, we have the bimodal and the unimodal. So in the north, we have the unimodal, and in the south...
What's that in
okay,
plain language?
So in Ghana, we have two farming seasons, okay? That implies that in the southern sector...
So in southern sector, we harvest twice?
Twice.
If you farm twice, you harvest twice?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
So in southern sector, you harvest twice?
Twice.
Twice a year?
A year.
And then in northern sector, once a year?
Once a year, without irrigation.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what happened. So we had stock, especially on the rice. There was stock from, and if you understand how the rice sector value chain works, the feed millers, the rice processors actually support the farmers with input, mechanization, and this also happens on the farmer-based organizations level. We have like the likes of Farmerline, we have Agro Center, we have AgroSpectrum, all supporting AgriZolve, all supporting huge numbers of farmers. And I think between them, we're talking about almost 2 million farmers of database between these four.
Producing what, rice only?
Producing grains.
Grains, okay. So rice, maize, and soya.
Exactly.
Are these the only 3 crops affected?
Yes.
Grains crops affected?
Yes, because if you look at millet, sorghum, fonio, granite, there is consistent market.
Okay.
And they were not at the receiving point of the ban. Okay, so that wasn't affected. So it was these 3 key grains. Now, what we are seeing is that now at the point of harvesting, at the major season for the southern sector, that actually produced quite a lot of the grains. Then there was imports of some of these grains that came in. So, of course, if you have imported maize, imported rice, obviously you can't be competitive. The local market can't be competitive because you're now going to harvest and dry. And that implies that you now have to re-engage with the market. And the short gap for the maize in terms of the 500 to 600,000 metric tons is actually what is uptake by the poultry farmers or the feed millers. Now, but the feed millers themselves have imported almost 350,000 metric tons.
I see. So they no longer need what was produced locally.
In fact, we know, as at the point of coming to the studio, in fact, from last month, we have received calls from some of the importers that, look, we have a lot of maize in stock that we want market for. But we also telling them...
So what, even the importers also are struggling for a market?
I'm telling you, because they kind of... And, you know, that is why if you read our press release, we clearly said there must be a repeal. We must take off the airline, okay, and repeal it. We must take off the ban.
And this is the airline that does what exactly?
The restrictive ban.
So the one that bans you from exporting?
Exporting. Because before...
So that ban is still in place?
It's still in place.
Okay, hold on for me, because that's an important point. So that ban is still in place, so the rice we produce, we can't export it?
No.
Interesting.
We can't export our soya as well.
Let me bring in Joshua. Joshua is the Interim Secretary, Association of Rice Producers and Processors. Joshua, tell me your story. Hello, Joshua. Please unmute for me.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. I think that my brothers have spoken a lot about their perspective on what is happening. As I speak to you right now, I am not a happy person at all.
Tell me why.
I'm not the only person, but all the members. The reason being that you recall that last year, farmers really went through a lot because of the drought. And so when the government came in, they announced a number of initiatives. I remember His Excellency the President announced the Feed Ghana initiative. I know under it they set up the Office of the Presidential Initiative on Agriculture. They set up the 24-hour economy, and all was for us was to kind of stimulate local production. And so, though farmers experienced serious drought last year, were motivated by this initiative, and so a lot of farmers and processors really went in to invest huge sums of money into the production of rice in particular. I have been in this space for more than 15 years now. I have never seen the scale of rice production as we saw this year. But a strange thing happened. Morrison was trying to explain what has led to this. Now, my explanation is different because what is causing this drought is not this glut is not because of the drought last year. It's just because there is no buyer for the rice. I can tell you that from October last year up to now, as we are speaking, all the major millers of rice in Ghana have stopped milling. For the first time in 10 years, Avnash has not bought a single grain this year. Avnash is one of the biggest rice millers in the country.
And why? Why haven't they bought any? Why haven't they bought any?
Yeah. Why? Because when you talk to them, the reason they haven't bought is because there's no market. I mean, there's huge influx of rice brands from Asia into the market. If you go to Wale Wale now, or Bolga, or you come to Tamale and you visit the shops, thousands of different brands that we've never known in this country. And these brands are so cheap that no matter how efficient you are as a miller or as a smallholder farmer or a commercial farmer, you cannot compete at the prices they sell the product. And so currently we have brands of rice in the market being sold for 50 kg, being sold for 350 Ghana cedis. There's no processor in Ghana that can buy paddy from smallholder farmer, mill it, and sell less than 500 Ghana cedis. So what that means is that the processor cannot process it because there's no market. If he process it, he cannot compete with the imported one. And it's not because the processor is not efficient. it's just because these products have been brought in through unapproved routes, and to extend, it looks like they have been dumped onto us in this country, because the prices they quote are they are not reasonable. They are not prices that any processing company in this country can compete with them. And so have decided to fold their arms. Smallholder farmers are calling on them, and they say that, look here, we have no market. We cannot sell. Now, to make the matters worse, most of these processes, I can call Olam, Avnash, Farmerline is an aggregator, Tamana, Tidon, most of them had their market with the Ghana School Feeding Program through Buffer Store. Most of them had the market through that. But currently, as I speak to you, they are members of this campaign. None of them seem to have any contract to supply food to our institutional market.
But here's a conundrum, though. We're still feeding our children in school. So why are they getting the rice and maize to feed the children in school right now if they're not buying from you?
That's the question. And for me, I think that is the bottom line, or that's the bottom line of it.
But do you know? Do you have any idea?
Do
you have any idea where government is getting the rice?
No, I know. It's obvious. Currently, last year, from MOFE's strategic document on agri, they estimated that Ghana will be producing 1.7 million tons of paddy in 2035. If that is true, that can translate to 950 metric tons of meal rice. This is enough rice to feed our children in the schools throughout the year. But I can tell you that farmers are holding the stocks from last year's 200,000 metric tons, plus this year's 1.7 million tons of paddy. It's in the bush. As I speak to you, I have paid people to stay in the farm and take care of my paddy, because I can't even transport it to our storage facility. Nobody is interested in the paddy. And this is the same for over the thousands of smallholder farmers who sacrifice their resources despite the
how much have you invested? How much have you invested in your own farm?
Yeah, I have invested for direct production. I've invested a little over 2 million Ghana cedis in direct production, mainly in inputs and then mechanization services. Now, talk about the larger group, because we represent a large group of smallholder farmers. On this year, the cost of producing rice was 5,800 Ghana cedis. 5,800 Ghana cedis. Last year at this time, 100 kg of paddy was being sold at 600 Ghana cedis. As I speak to you, farmers are looking for people who buy 100 kg for 100 Ghana cedis, and they cannot find a market. This is how serious the issue has become. And if this issue is not addressed, the spillover effect will be so dire that we will regret it as a country.
Okay, so stay with me for a second, just a second. Let me quickly bring in Bismarck with the Peasant Farmers Association. But Bismarck, we've always imported rice. In fact, we are an import-driven economy. Rice is something that we import, we take it for granted. Last year, we imported 290 million metric tons of rice. So it's not new. So what is new this year? Why is this problem emerging now when we've always imported rice?
Well, good evening to viewers, and then good evening to my my senior co-panelists. I think that you are quite right when you mentioned that we import rice a lot, and this year appears to be a bit of a challenge. One of the panelists actually mentioned that one of the major factors that is accounting for this year's situation also has to do with the exchange rate. And the fact that the cedi has gained some strength. What is happening is that the imports, the rice that are imported in the country, has become relatively cheaper as compared to the local rice. And in addition to that, I think that this year, somehow, there's some huge appetite for smuggling of this imported rice from all over the border posts across the country. So that has made a lot of the imported rice just within the system. And because these ones are also competing with the local rice that have been produced. And the fact that, and I think it's a point that sometimes too we fail to make, that we have not successfully been able to change the consumer preference for local rice to the extent that it appears that a lot of Ghanaians, in fact, I read a report that says that only 20% of the urban dwellers consume local rice. So it means that a large chunk of the Ghanaian population are interested in consuming foreign rice. So when the consumer have the option to choose between a local rice 5 kg that costs around 600 Ghana, that costs around maybe 70 Ghana cedis, and an imported rice 5 kg that costs around 50 Ghana cedis, he or she would prefer to go for the foreign rice. So that's also been a big chunk of the problem that we are facing. And I think that we need to find ways to ensure that this kind of blockages are dealt with, so that at least what we have on the field, we are able to work on it and ensure that those things are cleared. Then we can now see the way to go. But Evans, let me add one point to the point that my other colleagues have made, and that's about what NAFCO is supposed to do, and the reason why the agitation this year has become very severe. Let me admit that it was quite refreshing when we heard that NAFCO were giving an amount of money, that's 100 million, to mop up the rice in the system. In fact, I am part of the NAFCO producer price setting committee, which sat down to agree on the prices for rice, for maize, and for gari. And when the minimum price was settled on, we are settled on 12 cedis 50 pesos for milled rice, 5 cedis for maize, and then 10 cedis for gari, all per kilogram. For the rice value chain, the understanding was that because NAFCO was not able to deal with paddy, we rather prefer to buy the milled rice because they can't store the paddy and process them. So we said that is fine. Now, when the process to purchase the rice started, the expectation of farmers was that we would see and know the respective license buying companies out there who are purchasing the paddy. Just like my big brother Josh mentioned, the Abnaj, the Tamana and Co. They are the big millers people know. So the expectation is that you would see these people advertising or going to the field to buy the rice from the farmers.
But from what we understand, they are not even buying.
The information we have is that they've bought some rice, at least with the initial 100 million. But where they bought it from, which location, who bought it, those information are not out there. And with my members, I've not had one single member telling me that NAFCO or any of the buying companies have bought paddy from them. So it makes the situation worrying that when we are supposed to have invested 100 million cedis to mop up rice, and there's no evidence on the ground that this rice has been bought, then it's heartbreaking. So that's how come this situation it has gotten to
let's get to some numbers. How many farmers are affected by this? At least from your members, peasant farmers. How many farmers are we talking about?
Honestly, it's uncountable. Because
can you estimate for me? I want to have a picture of the extent of the problem. Can you estimate, know your members, how many farmers will be affected? How many farmers have rice, maize, soya they've harvested that they don't know what to do with?
Wow, that's because if you look at the numbers, that's around 1.7 million tons that we're talking about. And if you estimate that if you are looking at smallholder farmers, they are doing between 3 to 5 acres. For smallholder farmers, we are looking at around 200 to 500,000 farmers who are into this rice production that will be directly affected by this.
Did you say up to 200,000 farmers? You said up to?
Yes. No, if you look at, for instance, if you read the literature, there are about 500,000 stakeholders or value chain actors in the rice value chain. So this particular scenario affects all these 500,000 people, and that includes the farmers, the millers, the aggregators, those who are into mechanization and stuff. So that's the number of people that are directly impacted by the situation that I find ourselves in.
I mean, that's a shocking number. Let me just get a quick word on this same number issue so we can fully appreciate this from Joshua. What numbers are you dealing with at the Association of Rice Producers and Processors?
Yes, so 80% of our members are smallholder farmers. Mm-hmm. And by definition, smallholder farmers are those who do an average of 1 hectare. And so if we are estimating that Ghana produced 1.7 million tons of paddy this year, and the average yield of a smallholder farmer currently in Ghana is 1.8 metric tons, then we are talking about 1 million smallholder farmers who are being affected by this. This is minus commercial farmers who are doing 50 hectares and above. So the number is quite
okay. So for you estimate is that at least 1 million smallholder farmers are going to be affected by this.
Yeah.
Okay. So and let's put it more simply. So these are smallholder farmers who had invested to grow rice, maize, and soya, who because of the lack of a market now do not know what to do with the harvest.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with that. Yeah, that's the problem. And the situation got worse when the government announced that they had allocated 100 million Ghana cedis.
Yes.
To mop
there was a press conference. There was a press conference last week.
Yeah.
There was a press conference last week.
Yeah. So later we got the understanding that 100 million Ghana cedis was not allocated to rice. Because 60% was allocated to rice, and then 40% was allocated to maize. Let's assume that all the 100% was allocated to rice. Now, in that same press statement, buffer stock, NAFCO came out with a farm gate price of 5 cedis per kilo. That's 5,000 Ghana cedis per ton. Now, if you divide 5,000 by the 100 million, you are just getting about 20,000 metric tons. So that money, 100 million, is not much. 100 million can only buy 20,000 metric tons by the farm gate price they announced.
Okay.
Now we are talking about in excess of 1.7 million tons. So if you've made money available for just 20,000 tons, you can understand why farmers feel that it is kind of deception. That's how most of the
we'll see. Look, stay with me. Let me bring Edward.
And that's why it is difficult to find. Yeah.
Let me bring Edward. Edward, square this circle for me. As for rice, I understand the problem because we are importing way more than we produce. Even if we stop imports, we do not produce enough to meet demand. So I see why you have a problem there, because if you're producing and you are importing so much, then people would obviously buy the imported rice, especially now that it's cheap because of the appreciation of the cedi. But maize, I don't get. It's a staple. I mean, Ghanaians love maize. Do we also import maize with that same quantum of maize and soya that will create that same problem of imports then competing unfavorably with what we produce locally? Why is that one part of the problem?
Well, let me thank the people who are watching us, and thank you for affording us this opportunity to share this important topic with our colleagues who are watching us. I think the case of maize has to do with the fact that beyond, consumption, there's the industrial use for maize is low.
It's low.
And it's low because we have a very weak and poor, poultry
subsector. You know, if the poultry subsector had been viable, and you recall that until now, the poultry industry has virtually collapsed. By 2023, about 70 to 75% of poultry farms had collapsed. Those who existed, they did not produce full capacity, 50 or far less than that. Now, that industry has to resurrect. So until you resurrect that one, when you produce additional maize, then it is only meant for consumption. The industrial use of it is low. So that's one of the reasons for that. But you see, our development, you know, perspective of the agriculture is now, in my view, very poor. You know, it's outmoded. You know, we have the notion that agriculture is all about production. You see, meanwhile, we were taught in school at our days when we were reading Economics Made Easy that production is incomplete until it ends at the
on the table
of the consumer.
Yeah.
So what it means is that you just don't concentrate on production alone without paying particular attention to what market and so on. And that is what we have failed to do. Now, the market, as we are talking about, it's not just about the fiscal space that is there. There are so many things that make up the market. And there are so many factors that affect the market. And as a country, we are unable to align our policies in such a way that they can complement rather than counter each other. You know, I don't know who was thinking for us. We all know that over the years, national inflation was predominantly influenced by what? Food inflation. And the cry was that if you want to bring national inflation down, then bring food inflation down. So to bring food inflation down means that you must make food cheap and available. Now, you can see the direct correlation between national inflation today, that in October, as we speak now, national inflation is what? 8%. And it has fallen from 9.4% to what? 8%. Almost 1.5% or 1.4% reduction within 1 year. I mean, within 1 month. Now, it tells you that food prices have come down. But that alone also now becomes our problem that we have today. We have it because if you strengthen the city and you make imports cheaper, and you still maintain your development strategy, which is liberal, you can bring in anything at all, then you are not guiding imports. What they needed to have done is that they should have come out with policy that will address the importation. And you have to know what imports should come into the country and what volume should come. We do not do that. And because we do not do that, of course, people have money, and then it now becomes cheaper to import, so they went and imported the food stuff. So today, if you ask me, are we using the import substitution strategy to develop our country, or we are using export substitution strategy?
Those policy conversations we've had.
Yes.
Now we're dealing with a real peculiar problem. I'm not remember the last time we had farmers say they're going to boycott the national food. They look forward to it. And that's what I was asking the question. We've always imported, right? So what's the problem here? And then they've explained what the uniqueness is. But Morrison, let me bring Morrison into the conversation. Morrison, I'm looking at soya bean, right? We're producing, at least from MOFA, 2024, 304,639 metric tons of soya in 2024. The demand is 297 metric tons. So obviously, we are producing far more than we can locally consume. The demand, so the demand is not as strong, but we have produced far more, right? He makes a point. When we're producing this much, what was the market calculations that went into the production of this for farmers generally in your space? Was it that government was going to buy the soya and I'm just talking about soya here, or you were going to export it, and there's a limitation on export, so then it's left for local consumption. And now the market obviously isn't enough to consume, and so soya bean is going to go to waste. So what's the dynamic here?
Well, Evans, let me bring some global perspective to this. Our local soya industry cannot and will never be compared to the likes of Brazil and China and the US.
I don't even want to do that. I want to talk about the local problem.
Yeah, you know, I want to bring some perspective so you appreciate the nuances here. Government has never and will never buy soya. Soya is not a commodity that appeals to food security. Otherwise, soya is not a food security crop.
Okay.
When we talk about food security, we're talking about rice, maize, millet, sorghum. All because we are talking about grains here. So I want to focus on this. Now,
so you say government will not buy soya?
And government will never buy soya. Because soya is a purely a private sector market system activity. Okay. It's either a demand by the factories here in Ghana, the poultry or the livestock sector, or export. When you have a spillover of 300,000 metric tons, I mean, which I have alluded to earlier on in my statement, you realize that just suppose what was harvested last season, assuming we even did half of that, and add it to what we are having this season, we're talking about 400,000 metric tons plus, okay? That's 450,000 metric tons. Now, we ought to be exporting that. I remember last year when USAID was in town, there was Ghana Trade and Investment Program, where some factories were even given funding to procure soya so they could mill and give the soya cake and the soya meal to the livestock sector so they can add it to their poultry feed or their livestock feed. So it tells you that it's either the local factory demand are not in the position to have the financial strength to be able to procure and mill, or the ban that was put in place and which was fast-tracked. And this is, let me say that this is the longest ever export ban in the history of Ghana, in terms of grains that we have seen.
Assess for me the relevance of the ban now. There's a reason why it was imposed last year. Are those conditions still prevalent to justify the continuous existence of the ban?
Well, the fundamental issue and the fundamental problem with Ghana's agriculture is data. If as a country, like the United States Department for Agriculture, have a robust data, even on the global level, if we have a national agriculture information dashboard or platform where we have been able to map the production per acreage of every crop on the dashboard, we will know at every point in time when I issue you a license to import rice or maize, I know how much of tons I'm issuing to you, taking into consideration how much of tonnage is coming out of the production season. We give permits to people to import grains without any corresponding data from what is coming from the field. So by the time the imports are in, harvests are in, and we have all this mess that we have now. So the major challenge for us is to make sure that we build data.
Okay, no, but the question directly, I don't know if I got an answer. Do we still need a ban?
No, and that is why the chamber is calling for a repeal of the ban. And we have also called for a moratorium of ban on rice importation for the next 3 months. Mm-hmm. Now, within this, we give ourselves a 5-year strategy. Ghana set out, my brother will come with the fact that we belong to World Trade Organization, the tariffs and all that. I don't want to come to all these legal luminary issues, but this is clear. We need to protect the poor farmers. We need to protect the food we produce in this country. Let's come up with a strategy. Every year, for the next 5 years, Ghana will import possibly 300,000 metric tons of rice. The next season, it comes down.
I've heard this.
We need to be strategic and committed to it.
You know, we sound like a broken one. We're repeating it.
Yeah,
but we just don't move. You remember when under the previous government, under Akoto,
the former minister,
yes. He actually set himself a target and said, I remember doing an interview, I've forgotten, he says in the next 5 years, Ghana will stop importing rice.
No, we're not saying a minister, we're talking about government.
Yeah, I know, but the minister,
backed by finance.
The minister was communicating the government policy that the cabinet had taken a decision and that under the Plan for Food and Jobs, in 5 years, we're going to stop.
We will not import rice.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
That was the target.
Yes.
We're here talking tonight about the glut of rice.
Let me tell you something.
And remember, just a second. This is important, and Edward. So government issued that policy at the time that would have encouraged local producers to produce more. So that by 2023, we would have significant local production capacity that would not need foreign imports. Because the justification at the time was, if you stop imports, the consumption, the demand, far outstrips what you can produce locally. So there's a need to still import to make up for that shortfall. And so you have farmers like him and others who then put a lot of money into producing locally. So that by 2023, they will be in a position to take advantage when we ban imports. Here we are, still importing in 2024, $200 million worth of rice, right? There's a policy disconnection. I think that's the point you're making.
Yeah, but
that does not correlate.
Evans, hold on there. Let me
with what we are producing, what we are trying to do on the ground.
We import rice and re-export rice in the within the sub-region. Benin, which is one of the smallest countries in West Africa, is the largest importer of rice. Do you know that out of the close to 900,000 metric tons of rice to 1 million that we import, some of them are re-exported out of the country to other regions?
So wait a minute. When we import the rice into the country, the $200 million I've talked about, then we export some of that imported.
We import and re-export within the sub-region.
So Ghana has become like a transit. You import into Ghana and then it's transit to other countries.
Let me emphasize that. As at September 21st, we had imported 1.2 million metric tons of rice.
Into the country.
But
you're saying that it's not all for the Ghanaian market.
Yes.
Those who are importing also intended to then further export it from Ghana.
Emphasizing the reason why we need to repeal and take off the ban so that we can export
what we produce locally.
In fact, over the past 4 years, Nigeria has bought over 600,000 metric tons of paddies from Ghana. And the data is there. The chamber is currently doing a project called...
Is the ban also...
No, wait. The chamber is currently doing a project called ECOWAS Agriculture Trade. And we have done a lot of work with ECOWAS, and we have built data on what we export in an orthodox and recorded way. And you see, because of the rules of origin, so when we are exporting paddy within the West Africa sub-region, within the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, it is seen as a produce of West Africa origin. But the moment you mill, it's no longer a produce.
Fine. This ban on export, does it affect rice?
Yes, it does.
I see. So the government says you can't export your rice you produce locally.
Grains across board.
And yet they are not willing to buy it from you.
But
well, the projected figure from buffer stock was 700 million cedis. Mm-hmm. As we speak, they've been given 100 million. Now, and that was for the maize. In fact, when Bismarck was talking, I expected him to be clear. Mm-hmm. The first base rate that was set was for maize. Now, the next one, which the rice farmers and all associated allies, we all came on board and said, no, there is a need for us to increase. And let me first of all commend His Excellency the President for directing the Finance Minister to make enough money available to the Ministry of Agriculture and by extension buffer stock to make available what is required to be able to mop up all these grains. But clearly, we are not tackling the issue from the base. The base is that we first of all need to repeal and remove the ban. When we do that, those of soya that are supposed to be exported will be exported. Within the sub-region, we are creating a lot. Ghana is a hub for food production within the sub-region. And when we continue, and let me also add that Ghana also owes the ECOWAS storage facility with some grains, which is maize, ostensibly maize and rice. Now, this is the time for buffer stock to demand enough money to procure and mop up this and pay off our debt with the ECOWAS buffer stock. So there is quite a lot of work, and I think that a lot of people ought to understand
Edward,
what the actual issues are.
Edward, just before you come in, let me just read a statement that I've just received from the Soya Value Chain Association of Ghana, repeating what Morrison is talking about here. They say the Soya Value Chain Association of Ghana is urgently calling on government of Ghana to lift the existing ban on the exportation of soya beans, which continues to threaten the livelihoods of thousands of farmers, aggregators, and processors across the country. And they go into the background of the imposition. There's an LI 2467 that was introduced that is sort of restricted
that's the restrictive
export,
order,
you know.
On the soya.
But weighing for me on this, so we have a policy in place that has restricted the export of soya beans, maize, grains, basically. And yet, we have glut. The local demand isn't there. The buffer stock is not mopping up. And we are restricting our farmers from exporting. In what universe do you do that to farmers?
You see, I think that is the conundrum here. One,
the paradox.
Yeah, that's the conundrum or the paradox, you can put it that way. And that is it. You see, the model that we have applied, that is to restrict exports, is to make sure that, in my understanding, to retain food, bring down food prices, deal with national inflation, make the economy comfortable. Because a country that cannot feed itself, everything goes wrong. And we have seen it in our country. So the ban was meant for that. Now, the problem we have today is not, in my view, the ban per se. It has to do with two major things. One is government's inability to buy the produce that the farmers have produced, even at the current market rate. Government is not ready to do that. And everywhere in the world, farmers, there's always intervention to mop up from farmers so that they do not go broke to affect their subsequent production. This is what we are not doing. Then secondly, we have also failed to understand that we cannot continue to maintain the same level of imports of rice, or even at best, it's now worse. We are not able to do that. Then the third one, which is that if you take the entire country, apart from the Accra onwards, where we are serviced with produce or imports from the main entry points, if you go to the northern part of the country and then the BA and all those areas, rice and other produce come from other countries to service it. You see? And how did they come in? They are mainly smuggled into the country. Mm-hmm. So the volumes that we have that come into the country, which are unaccounted for, which is on the smuggling side, is also huge. So again, when you have a system that fails to restrict these large quantities of foodstuffs, including vegetable oils and so on, coming into your country unaccounted for, then you have a problem. Then the second thing is that even you have not put in place structures to address your imports whilst your domestic production is going up. So once we are boosting domestic production, then you should be constraining your imports. Unfortunately, what we are doing here is that we are inducing domestic production and allowing imports to have their own way, and then unable to also control the smuggling of foodstuffs into the country. So it is not only about rice but you can see even vegetables, including palm oil, coming from everywhere. When in actual fact, domestic consumption is far higher than domestic production. So certainly when you produce in the country, you should have a ready market. Unfortunately, because of the smuggling and uncontrolled imports, you produce, you don't even have the market. So this is what is the challenge. So the problem is not lifting the exports per se. And I'm telling you, if they lift the exports today, within 3 months, 4 months, and then they come to mop up everything, we'll go back to the point where we don't even have food.
No, but you are not saying that we should not lift the ban on exports. Is that what your argument is?
My argument...
Even in the midst of the glut we currently have?
My argument is that...
Government currently cannot mop up.
No.
And they have excess.
And I have a different view.
Farmers' livelihoods are at stake. As you just heard there, millions of farmers' livelihoods are at stake here. So what do they do with the glut that they have, the excess production?
My view is that it's not that government cannot mop up. No, that one, I just disagree with that. Government can do it.
How?
How can they do it?
They need the funds to do it.
Why? Where did government, how can government tell us they don't have the funds? How much are they going to spend to buy these foodstuffs? And you see that a country, a sovereign country, a middle-income country like Ghana, we don't have that type of amount. It's just about priorities. It's about priorities. So I don't agree that government does not have the money to do that.
But the reality is the government hasn't mopped up the excess production in the system. That's the reality. And
I'm saying that here is government. Government is supposed to lift the ban.
But
government is supposed to mop, and government is not doing the
free up the hands of the farmers so they can export what you can buy.
I'm saying it is not necessarily the solution. You can have...
so it's part of the solution?
No, excuse me.
Is it part of the solution?
I'm saying that...
No, is it part of the solution?
You can have a temporary solution.
Edward.
No, I'm making the point that you can have a temporary solution. Look, we are in this country. We've had...
So what's the temporary solution?
The temporary solution is that they should lift the ban on the export.
Would it work?
No, it's because when they lift the ban, per your analysis, if they lift the ban, then farmers can export, and then therefore...
But we know farmers don't export in
and I'm saying that
is... aggregators.
No, whoever.
Yeah, I know, but it comes to that.
Yeah. It comes
whoever will go and aggregate and take it out of the country, at least there'll be a market.
But
just a second. Let him.
So my point is that, yes, if you do that for now, look, given our inability to control systems, come the next 3 months, 4 months, we will not have food in this country.
No,
because the export. Let me make my point.
Let him.
Because this is not the first time that this has happened. Why did we place the ban? We placed the ban because we over-exported. In 2021, when His Excellency, the President by then, gave his State of the Nation address, he said maize production for 2020 had gone up by 110%. And then rice production had gone up by 48% over 2019. Meanwhile, in 2019, the record showed that we had a glut in rice production. 3 months after that statement, which was made on 5th January 2021, 3 months later, we did not have maize in the system. Where did the maize go? Then the explanation by government by then was that it was over-exported. They mopped it up. The people coming from other countries came and did that. And I'm saying that we are still, if that were true, and we apply this method today, we are still likely to fall into that way. The viable solution, in my view, is that you can't let your people produce and you say you will not buy it. I'm saying the government can find...
Government hasn't said they won't buy it. Government needs to find the funds to do the purchase. And the 100 million that was budgeted for, as we've heard already analyzed, that 100 million is a drop in the ocean.
When I say...
And can't buy everything else.
When I say government won't buy, it's to say that I don't think the government does not have the money.
Okay.
That is my point. So if you have the money and you don't do it, it means you won't do it. I'm saying that 200 million Ghana cedis, you think Ghana government cannot find that? 300 million Ghana cedis, Ghana government cannot find that? If we think that it is a very important point, a thing to do.
Evans.
So I don't agree that they don't have the funds.
Hold on for me for a second. I want to take a quick break. When I return, I'll hear from Morrison, but also hear from Amma. So what is the solution to the problem that the farmers are currently facing? I get the sense that they are waiting for government to make a move with the mopping up using the buffer stock system. That hasn't materialized just yet. And how long can they keep going with the glut that they currently have on their hands before we see the total collapse of the agri ecosystem for those who have invested so much? Remember, the banks are exposed to this. There's a whole value chain of institutions and individuals who are exposed to this particular glut. and can have a knock-on effect on the entire economy if this is not managed properly. My guest will weigh in on that when we return from this break. Let's still live you on PM Express. Thanks for staying with us, dealing with the crisis of significant proportions indeed. And as we've been analyzing the challenge with the glut that we're currently facing with grains, particularly rice, soybean, and maize, you begin to appreciate with farmers across the country, millions of farmers across the country, having harvested but can't find market for it. Just think about the farmers who have gone to the microfinance companies and the banks to take loans to invest in their farms, hoping that they can harvest, make a return, and pay off their debt. As we speak currently, there is no path to recovery for them until something really drastic happens. And the knock-on effect, as for the banking sector, the financial sector is concerned, but also lives and livelihoods and families, is significant. The entire value chain of aggregators, the processors, and the farmers themselves are also at the heart of it. So this is a big national issue. There was a press conference last week that the ministry addressed, and I want to quickly bring in Dr. Ama Enin Opondia. She's the vice chair of the Competitive Africa Rice Platform. Ama, please weigh in on this for me quickly. The news conference that was addressed last week by the Buffer Stock Company CEO made some commitments and gave you some assurances. Isn't that enough to address your concerns and to put you at rest a bit with some comfort?
First talk is just a tiny bit of the solution, because if you look at it critically, I think we haven't nuanced the issue enough. Yeah. Last week I was in Tamale with Joshua and some of his farmers, and I remember one of the ladies, Haja, she said, "You know what? Even if they bring their prices down to what I think she said is 100 cedis per bag or 50 kg, nobody will buy." So there is an issue with the kind of rice that is grown or milled in the northern region, for example, that is parboiled. And that is what usually the Nigerians eat, what they call their fada rice. So there is that part of it where tastes of consumers are not really used to that. So there's a consumer behavior aspect of it that we need to also address. So buying it is good, but there's other medium to long-term strategies that we have to put in place. And I think that I will propose about 3 measures. So there's the mopping up that Buffer Stock needs to do. I think last week some members of the Competitive Africa Rice Platform met the Honorable Deputy Minister for Agri. He talked about 3 things: that he was going to inject more money in Buffer Stock, which we hope that will urgently be done. And he also talked about the fact that there was going to be they were going to lift the ban on export, which will be good. I mean, especially as we know that, like I mentioned, the northern Ghana, for example, most of the rice they produce there is not eaten in the south. The southern consumers prefer what we call the direct mill. The north, they parboil their rice, so that would be good for them. And then he said that they are going to undertake an audit of all the imported rice in the country, which is good. But I think that we also need to work on consumer preferences and tastes. And this we can do through consistently feeding young people with Ghana rice. So it's not enough. I think one of the panelists, I think it was Joshua and Besma, who said that, yes, we were doing Ghana rice, and then at some point there was no Ghana rice. Buffer Stock was not buying. So guess what they were feeding the young children with? They were giving them foreign rice. So if we are not consistent with this kind of feeding them with the Ghana rice, then it means that at some point they would also start preferring the foreign rice. So we have to look at consumer preferences, making sure that secondary schools, primary schools, military, the shopping, parliament, all government institutions consistently, not just that they do it one time and then we make noise and then they stop at some point. No, but they do it consistently and we make sure that they are eating the Ghana rice. And that's one way of changing consumer behavior. And then my 3rd point is on strengthening the system. You know, even in the Bible, I think they had 7 years of lean season and 7 years of a lot plenty or bountiful harvest. What did they do? They stored. So this discussion that we are having, that we have too much, and then 3 months after we don't have, what do we do? The catch thing, the thing that will bind and make sure that we are able to have even distribution, we have even supply of rice, is storage. So I think that as a policy measure, government also needs to make sure that we are storing the rice in good condition at the good humidity level. You know, if it's too dry, then that's why we have all this broken rice when we mill, and then it means we have to parboil. So we need to make sure that the storage systems are in place. So look at the value chain right from the beginning. Rice is such that we need land systems that are well developed. It's not like maize that you can just plant on any soil or any piece of land. So we need to look at a holistic approach to cultivation, making sure that right from the beginning, land preparation, marketing, production, everything is sorted out.
In the immediate short term, though, you had threatened that you're going to boycott the Farmers' Day celebrations this year. Are you still going to boycott it on the back of, in spite of the minister meeting you?
That we need to see whether his words are translating into action, and we need to see that, because you know in Ghana we have a lot of policies and we say a lot of nice things, but in terms of action, how does that translate? How do we solve the problem?
As we speak tonight, you're so boycotting the Farmers' Day.
I'll leave that to Joshua to respond to that, because I think he would like to have a word on that.
Joshua, very quickly, are you still boycotting the Farmers' Day?
Well, we're just hoping that we don't get there, because I know Farmers' Day is a day set aside to celebrate hardworking Ghanaians. But Evans, what is the point if farmers cannot find a market for their products, and then farmers having to go to celebrate? What is there to celebrate? Like I mentioned to you, most of the 1 million smallholder farmers cannot come home. They are still locked up in the bush. This year in the north, we had huge invasion of birds. And so farmers are stuck in their farm trying to protect the little that remains of their stock. So if on the day of Farmers' Day, they are not able to get a market for their product, tell me, will you expect such farmers to come and celebrate Farmers' Day?
So
it is not a boycott. It's not a boycott. It's just to say that farmers will be busy trying to still find the solution to the problem they find themselves in.
Okay.
We hope not to get there, but if it happens, unfortunately the farmers will still remain in the bush.
Okay. So what will stop you from abandoning the Farmers' Day celebrations?
Evans, we have made a number of recommendations to the government.
In 30 seconds, repeat them again. Repeat them.
Written to the president.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're asking for government is to have a 6-month temporary ban on the import of foreign rice. We are asking government to directly engage rice millers in the country to buy the paddy and then process for institutional markets like the school feeding program, the military, the prison service. Is a huge market. We also asking government to release enough funds to mop up the excess paddy from the smallholder farmers. If enough money is released, I believe that in a matter of 1 month, this thing will be a thing of the past. And finally, just to prevent this from happening in the future, we're saying that the government should let us have a roundtable discussion to agree on a long-term strategic plan for our rice industry, so that in 2028, Ghana will become self-sufficient in the production of rice.
Joshua, thank you very much. Joshua, thank you very much. Bismarck, very quickly, is the Peasant Farmers Association also boycotting the Farmers' Day?
Thank you. Let me just add to what Josh said. The expectation is that it doesn't get there. We hope we see as quickly as possible the proposals that we've made. We want to see them in action. As I always say, when the farmers see that their produce are being bought from the fields, there will be little agitation. So the most important thing is to ensure that this agitation are brought to the minimum barest. And then once that is done, I'm not sure that discussion will come up. So we hope And we are very hopeful that as a matter of urgency, government will take steps to address the issues that we've raised and make sure that we don't even get there.
Okay, so when you say that, what you actually mean is government should mop up the excess grains in the system.
What the farmers want is to see their investment not go to waste. I think that is the most important thing.
I just want to nail this and get it clearly. When you say that, it's very broad. What that means for you in real terms is a market for the produce.
Absolutely.
And as we speak tonight, that is the buffer stock vehicle. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you want the buffer stock to buy up what has been produced, which is currently lying waste on the farms.
Exactly. And this time, we want them to do it in a way that is very transparent and has direct farmer engagement.
Okay.
When the buffer stock announces the millers or aggregators or the produce buying companies, that information should be public.
Okay.
The locations where they are, where farmers can engage them, and we want to see the buying going on.
And so without the buffer stock buying up the excess and the produce on the farms, if that doesn't happen, then there's a boycott on the first Friday of December.
Well, as I mentioned, I hope we don't get there. We are just hopeful that we don't get there.
Yeah, Morrison, I have just a minute to wrap up. You are not boycotting.
No, so we are very clear with our demand on government.
If you don't get those...
No, but the point is that I believe strongly that this government is very responsive and they will actually come out to deliver.
So you are not entertaining the possibility that the demand...
Clearly, I mean, fundamentally, as Chamber of Agribusiness, we are profit-making association. And what we are saying is that Ghanaian rice or Ghanaian food for Ghanaian people, when you invest, and 46% of the rural population are involved in agriculture. And our clear demand is that there must be a comprehensive audit of all rice brands on the market.
Okay.
The smuggling must stop.
That's fine.
Yes.
But fundamentally, your request, if you don't get your demands met, what happens?
Well, our demand, we believe strongly
to be met. You, from the farmers say to boycott, is there a fair action to take on the back of the problems you talked about?
Well, you can hear that it is not in the... Farmers are not necessarily interested in banning the... or boycotting the Farmers' Day. They are not necessarily interested. I mean, all this is because they want their produce to be bought. You know, and that is what I think that the government needs to do. It intervenes when the people cannot help themselves.
Okay.
That is the essence of a government. And that is when you feel the presence of government. So today, farmers cannot find market for their produce.
Okay.
They want their government to intervene.
Edward,
government must do so.
You never give me the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Evans.